Chris Eubank Jr. left the ring with his hand raised, but tonight, it didn't feel like a victory. His face was wrecked, his jaw possibly shattered, and even as the crowd roared under the lights at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, there was a sickening question hanging in the air. At what cost? Conor Benn stood across from him, battered, broken, but nowhere near defeated in spirit. His body said otherwise. Eyes swollen, ribs bruised, legs trembling, but his soul? That was still swinging. And that's the dangerous part. That's the part no one's talking about. The part that could turn this rivalry from a classic comeback story into a brutal tragedy unfolding in real time. Promoter Eddie Hearn could barely hold back tears during the post-fight interviews, calling Benn a superstar, painting the night as a win for British boxing. But his voice cracked, his eyes darted, his words stumbled, and you could see it. Deep down, he knew something wasn't right. This wasn't just a tough fight. This was a war, one that neither man escaped from clean. And now, they're already planning to run it back in September. Same stadium, same stakes. Double the danger. But peel back the surface of the celebration, and a darker reality starts creeping through the cracks. This isn't just about a rematch. It's about how far two battered warriors can be pushed before the fight takes more than titles, pride, or paychecks. It takes pieces of them that they'll never get back. And this time, the risks might finally outweigh the reward. The dust hadn't even settled at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium when Eddie Hearn dropped the bomb. The rematch between Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn is already lined up for September, right back here under the London lights. But there's a big if hanging over everything right now. Both fighters took a brutal amount of punishment tonight, and unless their bodies heal fast enough to survive another training camp, that fight might have to stay on hold. Eubank Jr., even with his unanimous decision win, didn't walk away clean. In fact, he walked straight into the hospital. Reports swirled that his jaw might be broken, a grim souvenir from a war that left his face almost unrecognizable by the end of 12 rounds. You didn't need a doctor's confirmation to see the damage. One glance at the way his jaw ballooned up told the whole story. Officially, the judges had it 116-112 across the board for Eubank Jr., but even Hearn admitted those scores felt generous. Still, he couldn't deny it. Chris probably did just enough to leave with the win. Yet, even in defeat, it was Conor Benn who stole the emotional spotlight. Hearn, almost choking up in his interview, called Benn a superstar, and he meant it. Sure, maybe Hearn's heart was talking louder than his head, because losing is still losing, and there are plenty of bigger, badder sharks waiting at 160 who would have chewed Benn up even worse tonight. But Hearn sees something, a future at 147, maybe even 154, where Conor could snatch a world title and keep this wild ride going. Names like Mario Barrios and Sebastian Fundora suddenly don't seem so out of reach, at least in Hearn's eyes. But back to tonight, back to the fight that left everyone breathless and bloodied. Hearn couldn't hide the concern creeping into his voice as he spoke to IFL TV. Chris Eubank Jr. is in the hospital right now. Media's saying broken jaw. I don't know for sure. Yet, Hearn said. His tone was sharp, almost defensive. You could tell he was rattled. We don't want too many fights like that. And he wasn't just talking about Eubank. He was thinking about Benn too, his young star, battered but still swinging. It's easy to understand why the fight took such a brutal toll. Benn came out like a man possessed, hammering Eubank Jr. with monster shots early on. But Eubank is no rookie. He weathered the storm, found the cracks, and started neutralizing Conor's power as the rounds wore on. The result? Both guys looked like they'd been through a car crash by the final bell. And let's not act like Benn got away unscathed. His face looked like it had been through a meat grinder, swollen, bruised, barely recognizable. Eubank Jr. peppered him with power shots all night, landing a staggering 367 punches out of 9 thrown, a 40.24% connect rate that left Benn visibly worn down by the championship round. The deeper into the fight they got, the more Conor's body began to betray him. By the 11th and 12th rounds, he was running on empty, nothing but heart dragging him forward. Hearn, visibly emotional, said it best. In the 11th and 12th, when he had nothing left in the tank, he never stopped trying. But trying wasn't enough to stop the beating. Eubank Jr., sensing the end was near, unloaded a ridiculous 109 punches in round 11, and then an even crazier 122 in round 12. For a middleweight throwing that kind of volume late in a fight, it's almost unheard of. It was pure adrenaline, pure will, and it showed just how far Conor still has to go if he wants to play with the big boys. That's probably why, deep down, Hearn sounded torn. Sure, a rematch means big money. British boxing loves a good blood feud. But sending Benn back in there against a man who just broke his jaw while taking his best shots? That's not a business move. It's a gamble with a kid's career. And right now, Benn is Hearn's golden goose. He's not just a fighter anymore. He's a brand, a headline, a ticket seller. And yet, the call of the rematch is too loud to ignore. Benn's stock is skyrocketing, even after a loss. In the world of boxing, sometimes it's not about the W, it's about the war you survive. And tonight, Conor survived. No, he's not ready to beat the likes of Jaron Boots Ennis at welterweight. And no, he's not taking out Bakram Murtazaliev at junior middleweight anytime soon. Those are different beasts altogether. But there are winnable fights out there for him, if Hearn picks the right ones. Still, let's be real. Tonight made one thing painfully clear. Conor Benn isn't beating Chris Eubank Jr. Not now, and probably not in September either. He's tough, he's brave, he's got heart by the gallon. But Eubank Jr. has that hardened veteran grit that Conor just hasn't developed yet. None of that matters to Hearn though. Not right now. Hearn sees the bigger picture. He sees the flood of calls coming in from America, the texts blowing up his phone, the buzz spreading across social media like wildfire. This kid is unreal, they're saying. This kid's a star. And in boxing, perception is everything. Hearn couldn't have said it more clearly. Conor Benn is now a young man who is a superstar in British boxing, even globally. Whether that star power translates into world titles is a question for another day. Tonight was about survival, about stepping onto the biggest stage of his career and refusing to back down, even when the odds and the punches kept piling up. Financially, Benn's life changed tonight. Whatever happens from here, he's set. He'll never have to fight for a paycheck again. And for a kid who grew up in the long shadow of his legendary father, that means something. Of course, the wheels are already turning. Hearn confirmed that His Excellency Turki Al-Sheikh, the power broker behind so many of boxing's recent blockbuster events, wants the rematch badly. They've even penciled in the date, September, back at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It feels inevitable. The story's too good, the rivalry too bitter, the money too big to walk away from. But for now, Hearn wants to let the dust settle. He wants to let the boys heal, to figure out just how bad Eubank's injuries really are before throwing Benn back into the fire. Because no matter how many people are cheering, no matter how many millions are at stake, there's a human cost to these wars. And tonight, that cost was written all over the battered faces of Chris Eubank Jr. and Conor Benn. The lights were bright, the stakes were massive, the violence was real, and the consequences? They're just starting to sink in.